Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast. My name is Jim. I am joined today with Owen and Newt, and we're going to be covering some linemen on both sides of the ball. How you doing today, Owen?
I'm doing great. I'm coming up from a little bit of, I was sick for the past few weeks, that normal seasonal flu kind of stuff. So if I sound a little stuffy and nasally, that's kind of why. But other than that, I've been having a great time in the short period that we got to discuss before the show kicked off.
Hey, Newt, how about you? How are you doing?
Doing good, yeah. Just kind of starting to get that wintertime feeling, and that means that draft season's starting to come right around the corner.
Cool. So we're going to be covering 4 offensive linemen, and then we will cover 4 defensive linemen and kind of going over the scouting reports, maybe a little bit of banter going back and forth. But let's kick it off with Mr. Donovan Jackson. So, Owen, what can you tell us about Donovan Jackson from Ohio State?
Yeah, Donovan Jackson, he's a big boy, 6'4", 320. He's currently their starting left guard. He's been the starter there for 3 years. He came out as a 5-star prospect, and in his freshman year was kind of a rotational guy for them. And then outside of that, he's just mostly played left guard from 2022 to 2024. He played 1 game this year against Penn State at left tackle. I watched 3 games of him at left guard and watched that 1 game at Penn State so I can get a kind of feel of how he was when it came to versatility and the ability to play along the line. For me personally, I really like Jackson. I feel like he is one of those guys that you can realistically take in the day 2 conversation, top 100 to come in and bolster a line. I feel he moves well for his size. He has some quick twitch ability, getting out of his stance. I really like his ability to get on the move on pull blocks and be able to seal and reach different gaps. So for somebody his size, I was really impressed with his movement ability. He has some downsides when it comes to generating really elite power, especially, which is surprising given how large he is. And there's some other things, like I believe he probably won't be able to play tackle at the NFL level based off that 1 game against Penn State. He got like a 0 PFF grade in pass blocking, which was reflective in the tape. So I think you got a guy who you draft him, you're expecting him to be a starter or at least a decent contributor for you at guard right away when you bring him in, and somebody who I think would excel best in some more zone blocking concepts, but definitely has the size and technique to, if you can get him in the weight room, transition some of that weight to some more muscle mass, if possible. He could also excel in some power gap scheme as well.
So what do you think, Newt?
Owen, I'm actually really glad you brought up the Penn State game at left tackle. I mean, it's really, really tough to see him out there. I think he's 100% going to be interior, where everything that you see for him when what he does at Ohio State, I think it's a really good chance to translate to the next level. Just a couple of kind of notes to add on that. I got a chance to watch the Oregon game for him. And I think one of the things that he's done really, really well this year, and even going back 2023, 2022, I think he excels as a run blocker. He's really, really good running and moving people, understanding how to run double teams and open up gaps for runners. That Oregon game was kind of a weird game where it was a little bit flipped around. He actually excelled really well as a pass blocker and kind of noted some of those things that I wasn't expecting to see, especially looking at some of the summer scouting stuff for him. So I think a lot of those pieces are there where he can put it together depending on what scheme he falls in. But he's got a really good chance to, as Owen said, move into that NFL system pretty seamlessly. We've seen this time and time again with Ohio State guys. That system continuously turns out NFL quality talent along the line. And I think he's really, really going to be a special player from this Ohio State draft class, want to be one of the higher players drafted. One of the other things, just to kind of point out, I noted he was a 2-time All-American, academic All-American from Ohio State. And I honestly, I think you can see it on the field. I think his football IQ is really, really high. I think he responds very well to understanding what the defense is looking to do with stunts and twists. And I think he can respond well to that and also kind of climb and move to where he's going to be an effective player. I got up with an early round 2 grade. He was probably fringe top 32 for me in summer scouting. Maybe didn't have quite the season I was hoping for from him so far, but he's definitely still a player I like, and someone that I'm looking forward to as a top 5 interior guy.
Yeah, so I think people aren't talking about how good this interior offensive line class is, because Dane Brugler released his top 50. Jackson was not on the top 50, but yet both of you are saying round 2 or round 3, definitely day 2, right?
Yeah.
And there's probably going to be at least one more person that we're going to cover in a minute who could also enter that top 100 conversation. And
absolutely.
Dane had 4 in his top 50, and that didn't include Fairchild, Ratledge, Jackson, DJ Williams, and a few others. So I think this is going to be a sneaky good interior offensive line class, and nobody's talking about it yet.
So, Owen, did you I don't know how many like players you've got ranked from the interior class. Where do you have Jackson? I'm just curious for like your interior players right now.
For the interior players I watched, I left that section of my positional grouping I hadn't gotten around to until I was asked to hop on this podcast. So of the 4 guys I did watch for this episode specifically, I had him as my top guy. I had him as like a mid-second to late second round guy. I do think there's some room to grow there, but at the same time, I also think he has some good day 1 starting potential. So I liked Jackson probably the most of the guys who watched at the interior for this episode anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for sure.
Okay. Next player, Connor Colby from Iowa. So, Newt, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. So Colby's a true senior. He's a 4-year starter for Iowa. Kind of like some mixes in there in his freshman season. So he kind of bounced around along the Iowa offensive line in a really unique way. So I think his sophomore year, he was asked to play right tackle, was it? And he was absolutely atrocious. I mean, he did not put up good tape through about the first 6 games of the season. And if you kind of look at his 2022 stats his sophomore year, everything that you see, like his pressures allowed, his blocking efficiency rate, everything is really, really low. And I think it comes back to those snaps that he had to take out at right tackle. I know he went to right guard, but he ended up finishing that season out at left guard. But ever since then, he's been the right guard for Iowa. And he's just continued to get better after that kind of weird sophomore season where I think they just tried to play him in a position that he really is not cut out for. And Big Ten play kind of exposes that. He's got the size. I don't have an arm length on him, but he's 6'6", 310. So, like, he's a big enough player where he can manage that. But I think that if you take how effective he can be in that interior spot with that size, he's got a potential to be kind of like a sneaky good late round pick where he might have, if there's an injury or something like that, an opportunity to start and grow within a system. He's another guy that I think does a really good job with run block. I think that Iowa system with Caleb Johnson, kind of being the workhorse and that offense effectively, he's part of that line that opens up a lot for them. But standalone, I think he holds his own in both aspects of the offense, both run and pass block. I'm just trying to go through my notes here, what I had from him. I think he's got really good technique. He's another player that I think he's just got a really good IQ. I think he understands the game. He is a really, really smart player, another academic All-American. And I truly believe that those things go together. When you have the ability to understand the game, you're going to show that in how you approach assignments and understanding of schemes. And then the game that I watched against Wisconsin, I think he moves really well in space. I know I've seen other scouting reports on him say he seems like he's a little bit slow or lost in space, but I thought he moved really well. I liked when he pulled to the strong side. I liked when he was out in space blocking on screens. And I thought that was good. Some weaknesses I thought I saw. Anytime I saw a power rush, I thought he got pushed off the spot way too easy. He got backed up into the quarterback. And I think a piece of his game is that he needs to get stronger in the weight room and develop a little bit better of an anchor. Because right now, while he's understands the game, he moves pretty well, in my opinion. If you see that interior power rusher, he's going to get pushed back and he's going to get eaten up by that.
So what do you think, Owen?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, especially with the fact that I think he is probably a better mover than a lot of people give him credit for. He was a former 4-star, so I do believe with the size, they tried him out at tackle back in 2022, like you said. I watched 2 of those games back for him. He's actually one I watched the most film for in preparation for this. I watched 5 games of his, including against Iowa State and Michigan back in 2022 when he was at right tackle. And he has movement skills when it comes to moving laterally, especially when he was at guard. You can definitely see a difference there when he's against some of the bigger, more slower guys. And when he was at right tackle, an issue he had was, despite him being able to move laterally, getting down in his vertical sets was a bit of an issue. And I do think he is a very good technical player when it comes to setting blocks in the run game, specifically with walling and making sure he positions himself right in orientation to the run gapping. I do think he could grow more when it comes to his hand technique. I do think his anchor is a bit weak. And one of the things with his hand technique is when he is fighting somebody in the trenches and they get inside leverage on him with their hands, he doesn't really develop any like hand counters like that. It was a big issue with him when he was at tackle in 2022, and it continued to show up a little bit in his 2024 stuff, not as frequently as he did when he was trying to both get deep in his set, so he had to focus more on getting depth, leaving his chest open, but also in 2024 when he was at guard, there were times where, despite him not having to get depth with that, when a defender was able to get hands on him, he wasn't really able to fight it off, and that kind of sacrifices anchor a bit. So I do personally think he could be a developmental guy you grab in like the day 3. I would personally take him high day 3 because I think he's a better athlete, especially with that combination of size. That if you could have him add a little bit of weight on, he could be add some more power to that game, and he has that movement ability. So at worst, I think if you're drafting Connor Colby, you're getting a swing tackle, like jumbo tight end type of player who can come in and just be that kind of move blocker in space as like a 6th or 7th lineman. And if you have him in your system and you like him enough with his frame and you think he's a high enough IQ player, you can bring him in and have a developmental starter on your hands in the day 3 kind of context.
Yeah, I had a 6th, 7th round grade on him. I definitely think he's draftable. I think you might be a little higher than I am, but I absolutely agree with that. I think he's a smart enough player where, man, if you can get him in the system, you can develop this guy. He's got the size and frame and movement skills. So absolutely agree.
So what do you guys think if a team drafts him and they put him at a jumbo tight end?
I personally like that.
Did you see the Twitter clip? Did either of you see the Twitter clip?
No, I didn't.
There's a Twitter clip. He caught a touchdown.
Oh, my God. What? I haven't seen this.
I believe that's him, and it's on the NFL Draft Fanatic page because I retweeted it.
Now we have to hit the pause button.
How about you, Owen? Do you think he shows enough that if you draft him, you can use him as your 3rd tight end initially?
I don't know if he could be a consistent tight end, but similar to how specifically, like just from frame of reference from watching them more consistently with the Bills and how they implement using a 6 blocker this year. It's Alec Anderson. Previously it was David Edwards. You have him come in and on passing downs, he is your 6th pass blocker instead of having a tight end sit in, and he can do that more effectively than you can with some of these other tight ends who may take longer to get more accustomed to pass blocking an NFL player. And if you have him go out and attack stuff in the screen game or on outside zones, I think getting him matched up against some smaller defenders will mitigate that initial issue he's going to have with power. So if you can get him in a position where you can start developing him and get him some actual in-game snaps as that guy who lines up as a jumbo tight end or a 6th offensive lineman in those cases, I think that will be like his best case scenario to impact your team in year 1 or year 2 specifically, depending on how long it takes for him to develop.
So Newt, did we filibuster long enough for you to find the clip?
I can't find it. I got a scoop and score from when he was a senior in high school that I know Fanatics retweeted as well, but I can't find this mythical 3rd tight end touchdown catch.
I was pretty sure that one of the players that we're talking about caught a big guy touchdown. I thought it was Colby, so
Okay.
I will go back and check. Maybe the moderator has been doing too many podcasts and forgot which player he was talking about.
Yeah, you got to be going through about 50 players a week, easy.
Yes.
Oh man.
Okay. So this is actually one of my favorite types of players to talk about because you're not going to hear too much about Carson Vinson from Alabama A&M. So, Newt, what do you have on Mr. Carson Vinson?
So, first time I heard Carson Vinson's name was when I said it while reading the sheet for this show. I hadn't heard of him before. I saw he was on the Reese's Senior Bowl watch list that Nagy puts out. So I was like, okay. So I went the game I got to watch against him. I watched a little bit of the Vanderbilt game, and I got a chance to watch him play against Austin Peavy. That was the one where I kind of looked at it in the scope of, all right, he's playing HBCU. He's playing at left tackle. So just to kind of give some background, he's a 4-year starter at left tackle. He's a redshirt senior. He's played over 3,000 snaps for Alabama A&M at left tackle. So he's played a ton of collegiate football. He's 6'6", 305, so almost the exact same size as Colby. So I love his size. And I really liked what I saw for him against Austin Peavy. I thought he was, and anytime you look at a FCS player, I think you have to be dominant and you have to wipe out the competition at that level. And I thought he did. He was someone where you're not going to get past him. Now, when I saw him, Auburn, Vandy, is a little bit of a different story. He got caught out on the edge and he got eaten up by a lot of the FBS, SEC edge rushers. But he's playing at left tackle there. He's playing against some of the best edge rushers in the nation at that level. So kind of tempering that a little bit and saying, hey, what if we project him inside to interior offensive lineman? I think he shows a ton of promise. I got done maybe he can play a swing tackle for you at the next level. But maybe he can develop as an interior player and kind of be a big one. I like how he moves. I think he's light on his feet. I think he wears his weight really well. Not that he's not huge at 305, but he's still got a really good size to him. And everything that I saw from him was him really struggling as a left tackle. But if you're able to move him inside, I think he could be really good. I got him right now as a 7th rounder priority UDFA. That's where I think he'll go. But man, I'm rooting for this kid. After reading about him and going through everything, I was like, this guy is just really, really cool. I want this guy to succeed. I want to see him on an NFL roster, signing a second contract somewhere. I think it'd be really, really cool. I think the one thing that I have left to note is he did have Power 5 offers. There was something about the Alabama A&M coaching staff that he really gelled with. And that's why he chose to go there. So it's not like he's someone that's kind of sneaking out of nowhere. He was a highly touted recruit, someone that obviously bigger colleges were looking for, but he chose to go small rather than having to settle for that.
Yeah, sorry. I also had never heard of Vincent before. You had sent us the list for this episode, and I found an ESPN article, and it was hyping up the HBCU draft prospects heading into this season. When it comes to the players who were going to be maybe potentially going to get drafted out of HBCU, and he was the number one player they had on there, specifically citing that he held up a little bit against Vandy and was able to not look out of place amongst SEC level athletes. And I feel like that kind of stayed strong there. I watched him that game against Vandy. I also watched Auburn and then some of the other HBCU games he played at his current level. And I do think he is light on his feet, as you were mentioning, Newt. And I think he is a great athlete, can move. Specifically in those Vandy and Auburn games, it felt like he was a good athlete enough to play it outside, but a lot of the times he was getting set up a lot for inside moves and was kind of behind when it came to reacting to what these defenders were doing at high speed. So if you move him to the interior, I do think he can continue to have that high level of athleticism and be a better athlete than the players he's lining up against. but it limits the amount of active space that he's working in. So that way, these defenders who are a bit smarter or a bit who understand more of how to use that athleticism to weaponize it don't really have as much space to attack him with that. So if you can do that, maybe you can clean up a little bit of his upper body technique. He does lunge and lean a little bit, so there's some room to grow there technically. I do like the idea of having him come in as like a swing tackle, somebody you want to have as like a 3 deep option, maybe a practice squad guy initially, and hopefully you can work his way up to being a guy who can be a primary backup for your team later on the road. I do have a priority UDFA on him just because I do think he is a bit of a ball of clay when it comes to a work in progress. Despite being, I think he's actually a 5-year starter at college level, because in 2020 he only had 200 snaps, but I believe they only played in 4 games. And I had the conference championship game, he has 89 snaps played. So I'm fairly certain, despite he had 5 years starting there, it was just the season was cut short. So a guy who has a lot of playing experience under his belt, like you said, 3,000 snaps played. I do have faith that he could come in and be an NFL level athlete. It's just going to be whether or not he can harness that, find the right spot from the play, and then really clean up technically up top with to be able to hang with some of these better athletes who are also good technicians.
I wonder too, just looking at the Vandy and the Auburn game, because those are obviously, I brought it up myself, but those are obviously ones that, you take your trip to Indy for the combine. Hopefully he gets invited. Maybe he won't, but at the Senior Bowl and everything like that, I'm sure NFL GMs and coaching staffs are going to ask about it. I wonder how much, they take into account. Carson Vinson is heads and tails the best lineman on that team, bar none. I mean, he's probably the best lineman in HBCU. How much is he having to make up for poor offensive play around him, and kind of keeping that in mind? And if you were to put him in a system where, hey, now you're on Tennessee or Auburn's offensive line, or a offensive line that is full of talent that is equal to yours, how much is he going to be able to be more effective? So I kind of wonder that too. I kind of punished him a lot for that in how I evaluated him. Obviously it was as a left tackle, but some things that I just didn't consider. And kind of as you were talking about, I thought of that.
Yeah, I think we hear it a lot when it comes, especially like rookies in the NFL, where you want to insulate them with some good players beside them or in between 2 good players if they're going to be an interior guy, just so that way they don't have to question whether or not the guys next to them are going to be doing their job, and he can just focus on what he needs to do and not have to really worry about anything outside of just what he can control. So there could be some scenario where he's playing left tackle, he's out on an island, and he has guys who he's expecting to have inside help, or some other situations where he's trying to put himself in a position where he's overcompensating for what the rest of his teammates are doing. But it's really kind of hard to get that from just watching the film. So you have to kind of break that down and try to analyze what you can. So that's really the difficulty when it comes to this kind of stuff, and why the Senior Bowl and the Combine are really important events for players like Vinson.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that we do podcasts like this, is that we want to cover players before they're in all-star games, so that if you're one of the 45 people following the podcast right now. So thank you very much for everybody that's watching. You may have just learned a new name. You have about 2 months to see if Mr. Carson Vinson gets a bowl game, I should say an all-star game invite. And I love covering players like this in the podcast, and we still have one more coming. But before we get to them, let's talk about Mr. DJ Campbell from Texas. And before you guys get started on this one, I want to give a shout out to Dean Kindig from Bills Mafia, because DJ Campbell's got Dean's cyan color. And that means Buffalo Bills scouts have watched him play a few times, and he's definitely going to become one of Dean's guys. So if there's any Bills fans listening and you follow Dean Kindig on Twitter, I know that this is one of Dean's guys. But, and I know that you are also a Bills fan, so I'm going to let you kick off Mr. DJ Campbell.
Oh, and you're Bills Mafia?
I am indeed Bills Mafia.
Man, I'm Packer fan through and through. But if I could pick another fan base to be a part of, like you said, hey, can't be the Packers, Bills Mafia through and through.
Yeah, that's Owen and me. That's actually how Owen and I met.
Oh, my God. Oh, side question. How many tables have you smashed?
Personally, how many I've smashed, or how many I put people through? Those are two very different questions.
I'll take you smashed alone.
I personally gone through only one, but I've been present and or been the hand that does the smashing of another person in several occasions.
So I was at the Colts game last weekend in Indy. I live in Cincinnati, not that far away. And my girlfriend had never been to a tailgate at all, and she saw somebody go through a table. And she had only seen that on YouTube before. But I'm too old to jump through a table. Like,
did she think it wasn't real? Like it was like she was getting gaslit by the NFL community?
She was confident it was real. But it's one thing you see it on YouTube. It's another thing to see it live, right?
I had a buddy get married, and we were up in Sheboygan. They were playing the Packers. The Bills were playing the Packers the next day, and my buddy was just like, "God, that Bills Mafia is coming to town. We got to watch this. This is gonna be insane."
We got another Bills Mafia in the audience there.
That's awesome.
So Randall and Bill podcast with me on Friday nights. So Randall and Bill, thank you for watching.
Nice.
Okay, we could keep going, but anyway, Owen, what do you want to tell us about DJ Campbell?
Yeah, DJ Campbell is another guy I came in with pretty high expectations for, just because he's playing at Texas, who's having a good year this year. He was another 5-star guy, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yeah, 5-star guy according to 247. He's a third-year junior, so somebody who may or may not come out this year, but depending on how well he continues to play, I could see him being a guy who commits early. He was a starter as a true freshman for them later on in the season that year, so he has significant starting time despite only being a third-year junior. If you're looking for a guy who combines athleticism with size when it comes to your guard positions, this is where you're going to get in DJ Campbell, and why a lot of people I think will have him in that day 2 conversation. I'm a little bit lower on him than that, just because I have seen some of those games where he goes against the top tier competition and he has some struggles. But you look at a guy who can move, who's at 330 and is every pound of that, and carries it well. He can move well. When he gets going on pullers, you don't want to be the one in front of him. So I think he could be somebody who comes in as kind of more scheme versatile, because he has that good blend of athleticism and size, and that size athleticism combo translates into power in the run game. So if he can just clean up a little bit of stuff where it comes to some slow reaction on his upper body hand technique, opening up his chest, or having a little bit of leaning tendencies there to get snatched and knocked off his base, I think those things are very easily correctable, especially for someone who's as young as he is and who can go and meet up with some high-level offensive line coaches in the NFL and really get that fixed up and ready to go. He's somebody who, despite me being a bit lower on him than others at the moment right now, if he can just become more consistent with that stuff, he could definitely be an NFL-level starter.
Yeah, I saw Bill just chime in with kind of like his take on him, and going to your point, Owen, I don't know, I might be around where you are. I got like a late 3rd, early 4th on him, where he's like might be day 2. I think he'll go day 2. Like at this point, I think he would, but I'd be like right on the line with it. But like I think that this year I wanted him to do more. I know he's a true junior, and he's been kind of in the fire since his start of his sophomore year. But I watched the game I watched Colorado State, and then I watched Georgia. And I think in both of them, with him as a run blocker, I actually didn't like him as much. I think he's a big, strong dude. Like, he's massive, like 6'6", 330 or something like that. Or 6'3", I'm sorry, 6'3", 330. But I think at the line he does a really good job, but the minute you get him out in space, I don't think he's got that like killer instinct or that killer mentality where like I want to see him get to the second level and then just blow up a linebacker and just send him on his ass. And he never really did that. I see him get on like screens or out in the flat, kind of in front of a running back or a wide receiver, and he was very hesitant. And he never like just took charge and took action. And for me, it was. In almost all those situations, I feel like he was almost ineffective. He was just standing there, and I could have put, a fullback out there and done the same thing. I think where I really like him is I like him in pass pro. The one thing that stood out for me is when I watched the Georgia game, The Georgia ate up Texas. I mean, absolutely. The Georgia front demolished Texas, whether it was Arch Manning or Ewers. But I don't think that of all of that, DJ Campbell is actually responsible for any of those pressures. I think that he held his own, and he's going up against like Michael Williams. He's going against,
Is that Stackhouse?
Yeah, how many players are on there? I mean, it's Georgia, like every single year. But like I can remember like watching him against Williams hold up his own, and I think eventually Williams got to him. But like the closest he ever got to a pressure was Quinn Ewers was already scrambling, and he was blocking Williams for like 5 seconds, and then finally Williams like peeled off his block, and then got to him. But I was really impressed with him as a pass blocker. I thought he does a really good job. If you give him a pocket of space to work within, I think he's athletic enough to work within that space. He's big and strong, and he's not going to get pushed off that. And I really, really like his ability to be effective kind of on the line where you're not asking him to kind of go out and move out in space.
So either you want to call out where his best landing spot is. I mean, I've already got a vote, but a team that's not coached by Aaron Cromer.
Yeah, I think especially with a team that's going to need a guy like him. I felt like when it came to a lot of the run blocking schemes he was with, it was he can get onto guys, maybe not sustain for the longest time, but get push and sustain that line of scrimmage. So I feel like a team that would be able to utilize that, as well as I do agree that I felt like his ability out specifically in space with the screens wasn't the best. So someone who's going to be tending to run more of that inside powers gap zone with some zone plays, but oftentimes not to his side, where he can be kind of that weak side guard, to not have to climb to that second level and really be forced to play in more space. I do think like a team like Baltimore, who's currently struggling with offensive line issues, and specifically with that, I know there are some other teams. It's evading me at this moment, but there have been quite a bit of teams that have had those issues where it's like offensive line, maybe like Houston, even just adding any kind of talent on that line would help. I don't know specifically if they're guards or where they're going to have to look for that, but so just a place that needs this kind of higher upside guy who could come in and has the ability to be a player that can grow into a scheme, but you also are aware of what his limitations are.
So part of my gift is listening to you guys. I'll transition this to you in a minute, Newt. But I'm listening to you guys, and I'm like synthesizing, okay, where would I put him? And Greg Roman he's with the Chargers, isn't he?
Yeah.
So I was listening to how you guys were describing him, and I'm like, that's the Greg Roman offensive lineman that does a lot of pulling. That was what I was thinking. I don't know that I'm right, but that's what I was thinking when Randall asked that question in the chat. What do you think, Newt? Where do you think a good landing spot is?
Honestly, the first team that popped in my head was the Tennessee Titans. I'm just looking at, Callahan is there as the offensive line coach, and you can't ask for a better mentor. Obviously, like they're still tossing around things. They got Skoronski on the left side, but like right now, Raduns is on the right side, and he's doing okay, but like not really standing out. And I think if they really want to, either stick with Levis or if they're going to get a new quarterback, I mean, you got to have a better offensive line than what they've put forward. And if you can get Campbell in like the late third round, like maybe you get him with a trade up for why is it escaping me right now? A comp pick. And you can get him in that like 90s region. And you let Callahan get his hands on him, and you let him develop in that system, and he can, benefit from, being under the guidance of a really good offensive line coach. I like that. That was the one that popped in my head. I totally agree with the Ravens. I think that's a great spot to see him land. And that was kind of one of the other ones that I fell back on.
Cool. And just out of curiosity, if you guys are, let me rephrase that. I don't want to put both of you in the same category. Newt, you have him top 100? I
have him like fringe top 100, like okay. Maybe somewhere around there.
Okay. Can I ask how many interior offensive linemen are ahead of him on your board? Like, is he interior 7 or is he interior 11? Like,
he's interior. He's actually interior 7 for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually have him interior 7. Guards specifically, I've got Booker, Savanaia, Jackson, Ratledge, and Roberts ahead of him.
Okay. Okay. So before we jump into the defensive linemen, I want to ask the 50 people watching right now, please subscribe on YouTube. Please follow Newt at NFL Draft _Weston on X. Follow me on X at NFL Draft Fanatic. There is no I in Fanatic. And Owen, you're going to have to search through the abyss of Discord because that's where Owen and I met. But let's start off by talking about defensive tackle Darren Cook from Delaware State. Owen, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, Darren Cook was one of the guys who was kind of a later addition. I know we were originally looking at Jaheim Otis from Alabama, but he recently entered the transfer or set himself out to be able to enter the transfer portal and save a year. So that's a pretty good indicator that he's probably not going to be coming out at all. So we flipped and looked at somebody who would be more of like that HBCU lower level guy. And I feel like Cook is somebody who can be an NFL level D tackle. I never really had him on my radar before we brought him up and into this conversation. But I did see some good flashes during his games there. I watched him against Hawaii in 2024, which is probably his highest level competition from when back when I did watch him. And then Sacred Heart and Campbell, which are some other FCS level schools. I did think he showed a good IQ for when playing on defense. He had some plays where he was able to get hands in front of balls and get some batted passes. He worked alongside their defensive front a lot. He did play a little bit of nose, and I do think being at 6'3", 315, that's probably not going to be like his main position there. But if somebody could get him into a good plan where you can add some weight on, I do think his frame is pretty good to add some weight. He could be kind of a smaller nosed or one tech in the NFL, but I do think he has a good blend of when it comes to athleticism, some nice motor. I don't think he has great technique when it comes to like getting out of his stance and really attacking, but I do think he has some traits you're looking at when you're looking at a late, a day 3 guy you want to bring in, add to the rotation, see if he can make your roster, or if not, be a kind of more developmental guy who you grab from one of these smaller schools and just see him stand out against equal level competition and then not look out of place against higher level competition when he goes against guy or teams like Hawaii.
Yeah, I got a chance to watch some Sacred Heart, and I kind of want to go back and watch the Hawaii film right now because I'd like to see him against an FBS team. And I think the follow up to that against Sacred Heart, I was just a little underwhelmed, given the level of competition there and everything. I think I saw him get like pancaked one time, and it's like, oh man, you can't be on the ground against like Sacred Heart blockers. And so it was a little bit like, all right, let's try to read between the lines here. I think he's got a good frame for the NFL. And I think, like Owen said, he put a little bit more on there. He could be an adequate like one tech even if you get him that. I know he takes most of his snaps from 3 tech, and especially in Delaware State's system. I saw a ton of reps in there where, he penetrated the gap and he got through. And he definitely looked disruptive. So he's got an understanding of that. And just, I'm glad that you said it, Owen. I said it, I got it written out. He plays with his head up, tracks the ball really well. His hands are always in the air if he's not able to get to the quarterback. So you're looking at a guy that knows how to, disrupt even if he's not there and bat down balls. But I think effectively, for me, it was just him not dominating FCS. And that's kind of what I always look at when I'm looking at one of these guys at HBCU or any FCS player, Ivy League or whatever. Are you dominating the competition? Or are you just kind of another player that's good, but not like amazing? And that's kind of where Cook fell to me. He was good. Like, he's probably one of the better players on the field, if not the best player on the field. But it's not like he was just demolishing the Sacred Heart offensive line. Right now, I've got him as UDFA. I don't even have him as a priority UDFA. I think, he might be truthfully like a practice squad guy. If I'm being honest, I hope that he can kind of build. It looks like, I got PFF pulled up, and it looks like a lot of his later games, his defensive grades are kind of improving steadily. So that's really, really hopeful. But that's kind of where I'm at with Darren Cook.
Okay, so let's switch to defensive tackle Thor Griffith from Louisville. And I would just also like to give a shout out. I know that that's a graphic of him at Harvard, which is where he played last year. I could not find a picture of him in a Louisville uniform. So there's the moderator's disclaimer. And Newt, what can you tell us about Mr. Thor Griffith?
So like looking up Thor Griffith, on Louisville's website, and then going back to Harvard's, I was like, man, this guy, I want him to be my guy. Like, and kind of to the point I made about Darren Cook, Griffith annihilated, absolutely demolished FCS competition. Like, he was manhandling lines, and he really, really stood out as a player that was, kind of above the competition that he was playing against. I think he shows off that Ivy League IQ, especially now seeing him at Louisville. Watching him in there, he seems to have a good idea and understanding of how to attack an offensive line, how to get on a player's shoulder, what things to do. I think he's a very versatile player. He can play anywhere 0 tech to 4 tech. He's got a body to me, maybe not like the overall size, but he kind of reminds me like a Vince Wilfork, where he's got a ton of weight on his upper half. And like, if he can get going and get going to you, man, he's gonna pop you. He's a good mover because he's a little bit more limber in his lower half. He doesn't seem to have the heavy feet, but he's a little bit shorter. And when I've seen him at Louisville, he's kind of like fallen into the rotation there. He's not a standout player at Louisville. By no means does he look out of place, though, which I think is really important for him as he was looking to get this 5th-year eligibility on his grad tour Louisville. I think that the game that I watched against Miami with him, where he's going up against Cam Ward and trying to get to him, he did an adequate job, not a standout job. He's only playing probably about 20, 25 snaps in a game, just due to him being a rotation player. He did get a forced fumble in that game, which was 100% pursuit. It was all, effort. And I think he ran away from the point of attack, trying to get to where it was a fake, ran back, got around the guy, swatted at it, got a forced fumble. And it was, it was what you like to see in terms of, hey, do you have the mentality of an NFL player? But aside from that, looking at like him against Clemson, just it didn't flash anything significant. I think that he's going to be, if anything, he's going to stand out as like a really good early down lineman, where you could get him in a rotational setting and you could have him first, second down, like, hey, go be a run stuffer, go, don't allow the offensive line to get that push. And then maybe third down, get them off the field and let your pass rushers get on the field.
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of the points I really liked. So a lot of, especially with commenting on his body composition and the ability to be able to move because he has that lower half. I do really like the power and pop he has in his hands and his upper half. There was just a couple things that stood out for me specifically when watching him against now ACC level competition. First off, is he's able to control the point of attack now, even though the linemen have gotten bigger, stronger, faster kind of thing. He still has that upper body advantage to be able to dictate the point of attack and get his eyes in the backfield, read and react to find the ball. But there are times, and it happens more often than you really like to see, that when he's asked to just be like a gap shooter or someone who is trying to just get into the backfield and attack with explosiveness off the snap, he can run himself out of run lanes or his gap responsibilities where he's getting pushed out, and there'll be plays where there's no one else stunting. So I kind of removed that element of it. And he's over in the left side A gap when he was originally lined up in the right B gap. And then that's where the run goes, right where he was leaving. So, and there was no one to replace him there because that wasn't the intended play. So there's some times where he could play a little bit out of control. And as a pass rusher, he has some wins where he does have some moves and stuff where he can complement with his strong hands. But most of the time, he's not really attacking with a plan. He's more so just getting his hands on, trying to read, react, and then go after the passer. And wins a lot with that kind of that high end athleticism mixed with that power. So if someone can get their hands on him and help him develop mentally a pass rush attack and understand when to use that and have some more pass obvious downs, I think you can improve him as a pass rusher. But for right now, as someone who can just set the point of attack, read, react, and attack the run, as long as you're not asking him to be that kind of guy, which allows him to start, playing out of his positioning. I do think he could be someone who comes in as a rotational guy, at least towards the end of his rookie year, as you get some more and more reps into him and have him understand what his role in the defense is and how he can maximize that initially. And then moving forward, get better as a pass rusher and overall just understand his role more in the defense.
Yeah, I liked all that. I think I like what you said about the pass rush plan. I had that written down too. It's like I'm just going to go at you with what I got, and if that doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But yeah, if you can get some technique in there, I totally agree with that he could develop some of those traits.
Okay, and Omarr Norman-Lott from Tennessee.
All right, I would say I could start off. This is one of my guys. It's probably my favorite watch of the entire session we had. He was just not because he's the best player. He is just so much fun. And I'll start off with what's good, and then I'll relay what the big obvious glaring weakness is for him in his game. But he's just a really great athlete, 6'3", 315. He moves so well, and the reason he's so fun is because he was just this guy who came in and had a really deep bag of pass rush maneuvers and was able to use that kind of athleticism with pass rush moves to attack the pocket, and was really just one of the most fun pass rushing D tackles I've seen in a while. There were some really dynamic plays where you're watching him against SEC level competition. You're like, wow, this dude like pops and he stands out. And then there's other plays where it's like, okay, well, he needs to he can rein it in a little bit. He's kind of freelancing a little too much. And he just seems to be a guy out there who knows he's a great athlete, who knows he has these kind of different maneuvers, can beat linemen one-on-one, but needs to kind of be reined in a little bit. And that's kind of where I started seeing the issues with him, was especially with his snap counts when it came to his time at Tennessee there, because he was on this field for a limited amount of snaps for what I thought a guy of his talent should be able to be out there for. Like, if he's dominating in pass rush like this, why is he not like an every down kind of player, especially with the athleticism he has? There's games where he has 14, 11, 17, 16. And it's really because when it's an obvious running down, they're just not going to have him on the field. He's at Tennessee specifically is like relied upon to be a pass rush specialist for them. And you can see when he's out there for like run plays, he struggles to hold up when it comes to his anchor and understanding where the run is trying to attack and reacting to that specifically. So while he is one of the most fun players to watch when it comes to being like that pure pass rusher, I do think he has a lot to go when it comes to run defense. And it's never a good sign when you're getting pigeonholed into a specific kind of role while you're at the college level, let alone what's going to happen when you get up to the NFL. Like how much worse is his run defense at the NFL level than it is at the college level right now if he's not being trusted to be out there as a down-to-down basis.
Yeah, no, I honestly thought the same thing. When I started kind of looking into him, and he's a rotation player, and that's all he is. And if he's, I think it was Trevor Sikkema had him like in a PFF mock draft, had him going like 19 overall, or I think 19 overall. And I was like, what is going on? And like there are just some things about it where he's not an every down player. I can't envision spending that high of a pick on a player like that. Now, like, just to reiterate and like to put some numbers to what Owen was saying, because I absolutely agree with that. So of the defensive interior guys I have listed, he's got So of the two guys we talked about, both of them have 9 pressures throughout the season so far. Omarr Norman-Lott has 21. So like doubles them, and he's playing less snaps than those guys. He's got the highest pass rush productivity, like per PFF, of any defensive interior player that I have like on my list. Like he's a freak when it comes to pass rush moves. I know that I think it was Bill said in the comments like best rip swim move of the group. Absolutely agree. Like I think that his whatever the move that he sets up, I think he's gonna annihilate an interior defender with that. I think that he does a really good job with understanding what he needs to do in a pass rush game just to get at the quarterback. But like to echo a couple other things that Owen said, and kind of moving a little bit further down, like I do have some durability concerns with him. I know that was another comment that was said. He missed time in both 2022 and 2023. So in the 2 seasons that he's played at Tennessee, one of those has been plagued by injury, and then he missed a ton of time at Arizona State his last year there, his redshirt sophomore year there because of injury. And then the other thing that I can't get past is like maturity concerns for me. Last year, I know he was suspended following the Florida game, and I know that there was a lot going on at the end of that game, kind of like an end game brawl, but seeing him come in and completely out of it, just jumping in, it's like, okay, maybe like you're defending your teammates, whatever. But then later that year, they're ranked 17 or something like that, and they're playing UConn, who's won a game all season long, demolish him like 56-7. He's running through the players after the game, waving the Tennessee flag. And it's just like not a good look. And then earlier this year, I think it was like a couple weeks ago, with the shove on the Kentucky quarterback out of bounds that didn't get flagged, that should have been flagged. And it's just kind of like a growing list of character concerns that I have around Omarr Norman-Lott, where, do I think he is a dangerous pass rusher? Yes. I think he's the best interior pass rusher in this group, but he can't be trusted on the field for run. He's got durability concerns. He's got maturity concerns. There's a lot that just it kind of scares me away from it as a prospect. I got a third round grade on him right now, and that's just because he's such a freak when it comes to pass rush, and you don't find that every day. But man, he's shooting himself in the foot with every other aspect of his game.
Yeah, I also have him with like a third round grade. I actually have him tied with the last guy where we have yet to talk about, which is weird because they're very different styles of player. But because he's so dominant in that one aspect, and that's one of the most important aspects, especially when you talk about getting after these high level quarterbacks where you're trying to collapse the pocket and attack, get some actual pass rush from the interior. Like getting a guy like this, if he just was able to clean up his act, and even if he couldn't with the concerns about the run defending, if he was normal, like level headed, like with injuries or with the kind of random outbursts he has in the field, you could still probably take him like day 3 just because he's that much of an impact. But it's just, you have to wonder what these character concerns. You're also not, an all-around player. How far are you going to be able to drop because of that? Like, and that's where the interview process of the combine and other stuff like that is going to come really important for him specifically.
I know. So I listened to, and I don't know if you guys have ever CBS Sports with the first pick with Ryan Wilson and Rick Spielman. Have you guys ever checked that podcast out?
Yeah, I believe so, because Rick Spielman's name seems to ring a bell.
Well, so Rick Spielman's former GM of the Minnesota Vikings. So after he got booted from Minnesota, he ended up on a podcast, and I listened to it a fair amount. It's one of the ones that I subscribe to a little bit more than anything else, and just kind of hearing his thought process and where he's at, and talking about, like, just like you said, Owen, like the interview process and those things. Like, hey, I can guarantee if he's at Indy, they're going to have those clips that I talked about and probably more, and be like, what's going on here? Why, what are these things? And can you explain yourself through that? So, kind of like hearing a GM's perspective on that, and like nothing is, missing their eye. Every player is under a microscope, and if the general public can see it and it's really big for them, I'm sure NFL teams are hyper aware of that.
So, and he transferred from Arizona State to Tennessee, right?
Yeah, he played. I think, in a redshirt freshman year, 2 years at Arizona State, and then 2 years now at Tennessee.
Okay. So as you stated, like we had a different player in the episode, and then we had to substitute a player out. And as I was looking up, did he transfer out of Arizona State, or did he get kicked out of Arizona State?
I'm actually not sure.
That's a great question.
Based on what I read, but please fact check me in the chat. Fact check me. I think he got kicked off of Arizona State. I don't think he transferred. I think he got kicked out.
Okay. I mean,
I said, Bill, if you're still listening in the chat, when we can jump to the next player, but we can circle back. I think there's definitely some character concerns on the player, which you guys have already alluded to, but I believe he was kicked off of the team.
Okay. Based
on what I read when I added him to the episode. So,
yeah, if our man Bill Sparks behind the scenes can get on that, that'd be great.
Yep. Okay, so let's jump to Mr. Ty Hamilton from Ohio State. So, Owen, you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, Ty Hamilton from Ohio State, 6'3", 295, so smaller than the other guys we've talked about. Up to this point, we've seen guys who are all like 6'3", 310, 315, 320. We've got kind of a smaller build here with Ty Hamilton. I watched 3 games of him this year, one against Western Michigan, Iowa, and then Nebraska. And I came away liking him. Like I said, I have him tied with Omarr Norman-Lott. Those guys are tied for like my highest grade of the guys we watched for this episode. And I personally liked him when it came to what he brought as a run defender, despite being as small as he is. Like, he was more of that 3-tech style player. He's a smart player, knows how to use his hands. Despite being 295, he has a very compact frame, so he's really able to bring that along with using some good leverage because he has that smaller size. He has to utilize that leverage more, so he has strength in his hands to be a good run defender from the 3-tech. I've seen plays where he slid inside and was able to hold up decently well as a 1-tech. So I don't think it's the size concern is that much of an issue when it comes to him being a run defender. There are plays where he'll get moved, but that just comes with being a sub 300-pound D tackle. I do think that when it comes to what's holding him back from being like a higher end defensive tackle prospect in this draft is going to be his extensive ability to rush the passer specifically. Like, he won and had some sack production at Ohio State. Like, I think he had like a strip sack against Western Michigan or one of the games I watched. I'm not recalling at the moment, but he is one of those guys who wins a lot in the pass rush with effort, with motor, not really coming in with a good attack plan. He's more so on the Thor Griffith side of the spectrum than he is the Omarr Norman-Lott. So you have a guy who comes in who's been doing it at the high level at the Big Ten, where you're going to need somebody who's going to be physical on that D line, who can bang and defend the run against some of these bigger offensive linemen, as the Big Ten has been known for. And hopefully you can unlock something when it comes to coaching, when it comes to the pass rush. But it's kind of the opposite. And when I said that he's tied in grade with Omarr Norman-Lott, that's why it's like they're two completely different styles of players. Where one, I'm way more confident being out there on early downs, and the other, I want to be my pass rush guy. If you could have both of them on your team as a rotational set, that'd be awesome. Or combine the two of them into one player, then that becomes like the perfect D tackle prospect. But for right now, he has kind of that opposite issue of what I'm having with Omarr Norman-Lott, with substantially less character issues.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I'm sure everyone listening to the podcast right now is pretty aware. Did transfer, but character concerns existed. So, like with any defensive tackle, you're gonna see a player that is either more for a second down or more of a pass rush specialist. I think it's like how well do you meet in the middle with that and have the ability to maximize your time on the field, because you're not a liability in the other one. And I absolutely agree. With Ty Hamilton, he's a stout run defender. He's going to clog up any run lanes. He's going to be an issue for players, blockers to move. and he's not going to allow them to kind of open up those gaps. I saw him in instances where he got double teamed, and even then, like a player that I would expect to get double teamed at some point, you're going to get moved off your spot unless you're Aaron Donald. Like that's just how it's going to be. But even Ty Hamilton in some situations, a guard center double team, he's given it hell and he's given it everything he can, and he's really hard to move off that spot. So he's really, really solid in run defense. But I don't think he's like lackluster in pass rush. I think it was the Iowa game. He had the strip sack. But I did see that as well. And then I think there were 2 strip sacks in that game, and he wasn't credited with the other one, but he was breathing down the quarterback's neck. And while he might not have touched him, he was in his face. So I've seen him, be disruptive in the pass game. In certain situations, he's really, really shined with his ability to go in and, take charge at the point of attack. But like other situations, like I saw him against Oregon, and man, he struggled against Oregon's offensive line, and shocking number 1 team in the country. And that high-powered offense, you're going to struggle against that. So I don't knock him too much for that. But that's the level of competition you're going to see at the NFL, and if not higher. So I think he's got a lot of room to grow when it comes to pass rush. He's got to develop a plan, just like Owen said. And I'd like to see him be more effective, but he is a great early down defender. And I mean, if you're asking me to pick right now, Ty Hamilton or Omarr Norman-Lott, I'm going to go probably Hamilton, tell you the truth. Just because like, I'll take that guy that's a workhorse. I think there's something to be said about it's not sexy to be a run defender. It's just not. Like, you're there, you're stuffing the run, your stat sheet looks barren. You don't get the sack celebration. You get maybe a stop at 1 yard, but there's a lot more that goes into that mentally, where I think that, you can take that player and mold him then into that pass rusher. I'm not saying he's going to be, a star-studded pass rusher at the next level, but if he could be on the down and be or on the field on third down and be effective, that's a huge win for a team that gets an early down early down run defender, and then they get some pass rush potential out of him at least.
Yeah, I don't think his pass rush is nearly the negative downside that I think the run defending is for Norman-Lott. I didn't see much of like a, especially having watched those two so close in consecutive order. It's like you can definitely see where the difference is there.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so Bill's throwing in a comment that the problem with this, Bill, you got to think through. You can't put Ohio State and Michigan next to each other. It's like oil and water.
Yeah, you're going to have Aiden Hutchinson just giving this guy hell the entire time. Like, that's just not going to work out. He's just going to be smack talking Wolverines OSU. There's going to be no chemistry.
Cool. So we just went through 8 players in 65 minutes, and we're at almost 100 people watching. So thank you to everybody. Yeah. Please subscribe on YouTube. We have draft content on this channel every day. Tomorrow, Bill and Randall, who are in the chat, are going to be the podcasters, and we're going to be doing 5 wide receivers and 5 corners. And then Monday, we got running backs and linebackers. Tuesday, we got safety and tight end. Wednesday, offensive tackle and edge. Thursday, Owen and Newt will be back to do more hog mollies. You gotta love right. This is where franchises are built. Is this Thursday podcast right here?
That's the big beauties, baby.
Both lines. So, I appreciate everybody watching. And Owen and Newt, any parting words?
Other than just, it was a great time to be on here. It's been a while since I've actually sat down and tried to record some draft stuff. So, this was an awesome experience. I'm glad I was able to come and contribute, and hopefully I can continue showing up on future podcast episodes and really just getting through some of these big uglies.
You gotta love them. I got a story for this, just like real quick, 2 minutes at the end. And I think I posted this. So Jim found me on Twitter, started talking. We just discussed some wide receivers, posted a top 50. Day before that, I posted that same top 50 list to Reddit. And, I posted it and just ripped to shreds. Reddit did what Reddit was fully expected to do, just called me out and ripped me to shreds. And I, kind of got a kick out of it. I was like, that was what I expected. Threw up the same top 50 list on Twitter. Jim offers me a spot on a podcast that day. And I was like, man, I go from being the biggest idiot in the world and not knowing a damn thing about draft content or anything. And then, hey, we'd like to have you on the podcast. And so Jim, it was, I mean, talk about like, two sides of the spectrum. It was a fun swing, and I'm really glad you reached out. I had a ton of fun tonight.
So thank you. So we have a really eclectic group of podcasters, right? So each night, Monday through Friday, it's going to be a different group, right? So do you know who the carpenter is? Do you know who the restaurant owner is? 3 of them are college students, right? We are all over the place with like who's coming in. One of them's even a cab driver. You guys haven't met the cab driver hat. I have. No. But I've been working with the cab driver for 3 years. He's awesome. But we're an eclectic group, but we like talking about football, and we are going to have draft content that is going to blow everybody away. We're doing scouting reports. We'll be going right up until the end of the NFL regular season with scouting reports just like this. We have quarterbacks week coming up, an entire week dedicated to the most important position in professional sports. So hours of podcasts on quarterbacks alone. And we've got some other fun episodes mixed in, how to rebuild a team. How are the championship teams built? We have a lot of things planned. So I appreciate everybody that's watching the podcast. Like I said, absolutely. This is impressive that we have 100 people that want to learn about linemen. Like, forget running backs. Like running backs, we get like 150 people watching. We have 90 people that wanted to learn about linemen. So to all of you out there on the internet that are watching this now, thank you very much. On behalf of Newt, Owen, and myself, have a great Thursday. And until next time, remember, every day's draft day if you have the right attitude.